never talk about fear, but fear is basically software that's installed from the factory. You learn to fear. You're not taught to fear anything. As a matter of fact, you're taught to manage your fear of things. But fear comes as simply as the assessment of consequences. And most of the time, it's running in the background so that you glance both ways at an intersection. It's running in the background so that you check the date on the carton of milk. It's working in the background so that you watch where you step to keep from tripping. And those types of fear are normal everyday items, but we don't consider them fear, we just consider them paying attention. But the truth is, situational awareness is about fear. It's about scanning the room, looking for an anomaly. And any anomaly thrown into the mix generates at least a small fear spike. Sometimes it's internal, sometimes it's external if it's a threat. But basically that software is designed to notify your cognitive thought so that it can decide whether or not what you're dealing with is a threat. Our problem is, for years we equate fear and panic, and they're not the same thing. And then we equate fear and cowardice, and they're not the same thing. Fear is normal. Fear is great fuel. Fear is something that's installed that needs to stay there. As a matter of fact, the elimination of fear would be a very bad idea. Alcohol induction has eliminated a lot of fear with bad results over the years. So the truth is, we're looking for the types of fear that need to be managed. And in law enforcement, military, emergency services, the biggest fear is always the fear of the unknown. And everything we go into is unknown. We never know what another person or another situation is going to do. So the fear is automatically ramped up the second we get dispatched to a call or sent to a scene. Our alertness has to go up, because when our alertness goes up, the fear spike goes up. And it's managing that fear and what you do with it that counts. The first thing you have to do is recognize it and not be afraid of it. The first thing you need to do is recognize that it's absolutely natural. I'm supposed to be afraid. Then the second that you realize that the fear is natural, you start analyzing what you're afraid of. Once you start thinking, you start processing that emotion. Once you start breathing, once you start making decisions, once you start cognitively recognizing it's there, you're better off. Our biggest problem is we try to tamp it down. In law enforcement culturally, and emergency services and military culturally, there's been this stigma to admitting you were afraid. Unless we admit we're afraid, we can't manage it. Much like any other problem, the first step is admitting you have a problem. Well, in my opinion, fear's not a problem. Fear is actually something that keeps you alive. It's there to keep you safe. Fear is what makes sure that you don't step wrong and don't decide wrong. But once you recognize that it's there for your use, it changes from this incredibly horrible thing that we have that's there that we think we need to conceal to something you can actually use to drive. Emotion in itself is the fuel that makes us do everything. We do it based on an emotion or a need. Emotion always has to be there. That's what drives you forward. You just can't let emotion be in the driver's seat. If you consider fear or any other emotion as the fuel that you use to make your decisions, and fuel that you use to get through life, imagine you consider that with the analogy of that's what belongs in the gas tank. But no one driving a vehicle would ever consider pouring gas in the driver's seat. As long as you manage the emotion and manage the fear, it becomes something that actually helps you manage the situation. Managing it just takes recognizing it and understanding what it is and pushing forward from there.